I just wanted to take a moment to talk about freedom and to do it in an unscripted manner. So, like a lot of times, people will talk about freedom, but you never hear them talk about, say, the consequences of tearing down a functional government. A government that, in your mind, may not be completely effective, but letting that drive you to believing that somehow no government would be preferable is a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. Okay, first of all, um, really, there is no freedom. There's no such thing as freedom. You can talk about being more free, having more rights, having more less regulation. You can talk about that. Freedom's going to be emerging from the comparison of condition differences. But as an ideology, it's completely senseless. It makes no sense. It really makes no sense to give it a single word and objectify it like that. Um, you'd be better off calling it the condition of freedom, or something like nearing the optimum condition of freedom for the individual. Something descriptive like that, so that what you were saying made sense. So that when you said freedom, you weren't just appealing to nationalism. You weren't When you say freedom, you're not just appealing to the nationalism of, say, let's say a marginalized group. Let's say a marginalized group that's become xenophobic from being marginalized. I mean, I just want to be fair. Um, you know, people, and you can also say the marginalized xenophobic group was xenophobic before they became marginalized, and that's usually a pretty fair criticism, given that a lot of this stuff emerges from destructive ideologies. But back to freedom. So let's say, hypothetically, you destroyed the oppressive government that's keeping you from your freedoms. What's going to happen? What's going to happen is that there's going to be a regional power struggle, and basically the equivalent of warlords are going to emerge, right? So that you can't travel from point A to point B without passing through multiple different checkpoints and conditional changes in conditions. You might go from a Mad Max area of total lawlessness into a highly theocratic area, and then you might pass into another area where there's a good balance, and so you can't get from point A to point B effectively without having a lot of trouble in the transitions, and those people skirmishing between each other, conditions changing all the time. This is what freedom looks like without a government. It's not free at all. It's just being oppressed by multiple groups and individuals who aren't concerned anymore about being apprehended by an overarching government. So you're less free in the condition where you have smaller regional governments that have less control over what's going on with their populace. And you can't get from point A to point B easily. So that's the benefits of having an overarching government. And so saying that you want to be free from this oppressive overarching government, you're also saying that you actually want to live in a situation where you're actually less free, to be honest. So it makes no sense from that perspective. You're not going to be free unless there's a single idea over the whole land that's being enforced, and that idea is reasonable. And the best way to get that way is to have participation of the people, however effective it is or isn't. I mean, yeah, that whether or not the government's a sham or not is going to depend on the participation of the people and the transparency. But that's how you get to freedom, right? An overarching government, and I think maybe we don't go all the way to the end where there's a world government. We hold back to where there's like 4 or 5 major, just the way we have it, to be honest. I mean, at a minimum, you have to keep it the way it is in order to maintain health, to control the health concerns of humans just coming from other areas and taking diseases with them. We have to control that at a minimum. So moving, so the notion of freedom, it's not even a thing. Okay, it's really just the conditions that you want to live under. Okay, so let's take anarchy. Anarchy is an interesting case because, oh well, we can just no, I hear there's a lot of people, it's we can knock the governments out and we can just have the people cooperate with each other. Okay, but you understand that nothing's going to stop this warlord situation from emerging. People are always going to be trying to control other people to gain more from themselves. That's just human nature. I mean, it's life. It's the nature of life. Animals do that. They try to gain control over each other. So if you want an anarchy, you can't escape the fact that you have to create a group that eliminates groups. So you have to have a group that goes around and says, no, you can't have this group because this is an anarchy and the people work together as individuals. But that group that eliminates groups has to be ideologically honest, okay? You're giving them total power to eliminate groups, and there's no such thing, no really good evidence in history that people that have power don't corrupt. I mean, we have a saying, power corrupts absolutely, right? I mean, we have a saying for it. So there's no real situation where we can trust an anarchic group that's tasked with just breaking groups apart to manage that appropriately. And what's the difference between a group that breaks groups apart and an autocracy? Right? Isn't that what autocracy does? It goes around and it disperses and breaks apart groups that are trying to build up enough power to take on the autocracy. I mean, how far off is autocracy from anarchy? So if we're talking about, there's no realistic anarchy. There's no regional kind of work around. The European Union's doing it, but you could, I mean, and the United States does it. You could, they have state power, a balance between state and federal, and that basically works, and they struggle back and forth. So what we have works. Like, you don't want to destroy this and go on with just regional powers. That's not going to be more free. It's going to be less free. And anarchy is not a thing. So the state and federal kind of idea of balancing regional power against a universal overarching power and having that struggle back and forth, that is the best way to do it. And that's going to attain the most quote unquote freedom for you. And then after that, it's just going to be about socioeconomic status, since at the moment, the only system of value we have is limited. And we have to talk about systems of value if you want to talk about freedom. And if you want to talk about freedom, you got to talk about determinism and unconscious tendencies. How much of what you do has been determined by factors beyond your control. How much of what you do that guides your decision making has been indoctrinated into you as a child that you weren't able to question and make conscious, that drives your decision making. I mean, those also wear down this freedom that people seek. So just question freedom and understand that we need an overarching government. We need that government to be efficient. We need that government to be transparent. We need to have participation. For instance, the people should participate by voting on the laws. I mean, at this point, we can have a system. We can have a global system if we could just get the security locked down, where people participated as much as they want in every single law that's available to vote on. If they could vote from home, if we could get things secure enough for people to vote from home, then your vote could be worth as much power as you want to put into it. As much work as you want to do is the amount of work that your vote will count for. Instead of this, like, you have one vote and then that vote only counts for this much because you have so many people, and like the electoral college, it doesn't work. It's conditioning in such a way that it minimizes the votes of some people and gives more power to others. It's archaic. So anyway, the goal of this video was, number one, to deliver a scriptless video, but also just to talk about this notion of freedom, and that there's no, it's a contradiction in itself. It's a condition. It's a condition that you live under, and having less government means that the guy next to you governs you. They govern you through fear. They govern you through politics, local politics. You know, you always have that pressure of local politics. It's the threat of force, not the use of force, that keeps people in line. So an overarching government with the constant threat of the use of force for basic human crimes like murder and theft and things like that is what's needed. So you don't have to worry about the guy next to you acting as a police officer anytime he wants. You don't have to worry about these things constantly. So anyway, thanks YouTube, and just tune back in for the channel. Like and subscribe to the channel. We're growing it slowly. I'm doing a lot of I do a lot of informational deliveries, but I want to be candid also and have these free form videos. And I just want to see what we'll do better in the long run. These videos are easier to make, and I think maybe more interesting in some sense. But informational deliveries are so important that I'm probably gonna keep doing both. So anyway, if you like this kind of subject matter, help us out by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks, YouTube.